Hello, everyone. My name is Oksana Wildrick, and during Capstone 2, my team did their newsletter about homelessness, and our instructor had us just do our presentations about the articles that we wrote for the newsletter. So this presentation is about the article that I wrote for the newsletter, so it was completely done by me. This presentation and the article and all that, and it is about violence against homelessness. So in Capstone 2, I wrote the article Violence Against Homelessness for the newsletter, Homelessness, a Solvable Problem. The newsletter is from the National Alliance to End Homelessness. The article is about the misconception that the homeless are violent and the violence that happens against the homeless. So there are many different stereotypes when it comes to the homeless, but there's also the stereotype that the homeless are violent. So people try to avoid the homeless based off of these stereotypes. There is a stereotype that exists within society that the homeless is violent. This stereotype prevents people from wanting to help the homeless and is why many try to avoid the homeless at all costs. The stigma that surrounds the homeless contributes to the vicious circle that prevents them from getting out of homelessness. Like all stereotypes, this one is very harmful. We are all guilty or know somebody who's guilty of walking down the street and seeing someone that's homeless, and we turn the other way or we cross the street and go down the other side because we don't want a confrontation with them because we are afraid that they're going to try to talk to us or that they might be violent. This is a huge misconception and a horrible stereotype. The majority of homeless people are not violent. They are just, trying to figure out their lives and trying to get out of this horrible circle. And by people thinking that they are violent, we don't help them, and without help, a lot of people who are homeless cannot get out of homelessness, so they end up the circle continues and they stay in homelessness. So this stereotype is insanely harmful, and we need to stop contributing to it and stop avoiding the homeless because they are not violent. There's actually a lot of violence against the homeless. There are hate crimes against the homeless. Hate crimes law actually include the homeless now, and there's stigma that prevents protection for the homeless. So the homeless are victims every day of violence and are targets to many hate crimes. Hate crimes against the homeless have increased so much recently that many city governments have had to redefine their hate crime laws to include the homeless. Even though the homeless are supposed to be protected by these laws, the stigma and stereotypes surrounding the homeless has prevented some from enforcing these laws and protecting the homeless. So hate crimes are crimes against people because of their race, ethnicity, gender, sex, their orientation, all of these things. And a lot of lawmakers have had to rewrite these laws to include the homeless because so many crimes have been happened against the homeless just because they are homeless. So that is what defines it as a hate crime. So a lot of city laws have included hate crimes against the homeless under their hate crime laws to help protect them, but because there's stigma, this prevents protection. So some officers or officials won't protect the homeless even though they're supposed to because there's this stigma that the homeless are bad or that they're lazy or that they're violent. So the people who are supposed to protect them aren't protecting them. And this is because they believe the stigma, they believe the stereotypes, and we are all guilty of believing stereotypes or stigma about something, whether it's the homeless or something else. So we can't specifically blame those people, but we can blame the stereotypes and the stigma, and we need to stop the stereotypes and the stigma because this is what is increasing the violence against the homeless. And so some people will harass the homeless or be mean to them because they think that they're lazy or that they just want drugs or for whatever reasons, and this is not okay. There's also a lot of violence against homeless women. So there's been a huge increase in violence against homeless women, and victims of violence are more, and the women are victims of violence more than any other group. So there has been a significant increase in violence against homeless women. Homeless women are more at risk for being victims of violence than any other homeless groups and are found to have more visits to clinics because of this violence than other groups. The stereotypes prevent many from believing these women when they try to speak out against the violence. So when a homeless woman tries to speak out against the violence that's happening against her, many will say, oh, well, you're homeless, so that's why. If you would have had a house, then this wouldn't have happened to you. Or a lot of homeless women are victims of violence from their partners. And so a lot of people say, leave your partner. But when this is the only person that they have and they are homeless, sometimes that partner, they rely on that partner for food or water or income or stuff like that. And so it's not as easy to just be like, oh, leave them. And then when homeless women are raped, a lot of people don't believe them because they assume that, oh, maybe you were lying, maybe you were high off of drugs, and drugs is a whole other stereotype when it comes to the homeless. And so a lot of people don't believe these women, so then there's no protection for them, and they just become even, the cycle of violence just continues against these women. There's also homeless families. So homeless families are at increased risk of violence against them, and there's a cycle of homelessness for homeless families. Homeless families, especially families with young children, have an increased risk of violence against them. This persistent violence is a factor in preventing them from getting out of homelessness and is keeping them in homelessness. The little money that they may have ends up being spent on medical attention instead of being saved for a home. So when you're homeless and you have young children or a family, a lot of your focus goes on them and making sure they have the needs, their needs are met. And so instead of saving money for a home, and especially when there's violence against these children, against these families, they're using any money that they have to go for medical attention, so they can't save that money for a home. And this becomes a cycle. So any money that they get in or that they accumulate goes for medical attention, and they can't save it for a home. So then there's more money saved, there's victims of violence and goes for medical attention. So it's just this huge cycle of homelessness and violence, and they can't get out of it because they're not receiving the help that they need. And many turn a blind eye. Many ignore the homeless, and many turn a blind eye to the violence. The stereotypes prevent many from helping the homeless, and fear of what might happen to them prevent many from helping when they witness the violence against the homeless. Those that do this then may use the stereotypes to justify not helping and their actions. We all need help in some way, and we all need to stop ignoring this issue and hiding behind the stereotypes. We are all guilty of turning a blind eye when it comes to the homeless. We have ignored them, walked down the street and not looked them in the eye, crossed the street when we saw them, rolled up our window when we drove past them, ignoring their signs, ignoring their cries for help. And we have all done this, including myself, and we need to stop turning the blind eye and stop ignoring them. There are ways to help the homeless when we see violence without personally interfering, because I know many are afraid that if they interfere, then they will become victims. You can call the police, you can call for help. This is something that's so important, because then the proper authorities will help the homeless, and you don't have to specifically do it. When you see violence, you don't have to run in there and try to stop it. You can call for help. That is what the help is there for. And we need to stop justifying our actions of not helping them with the stereotypes, because that's just continuing all of this. We need to stop ignoring the homeless, stop turning a blind eye, and help them. We also need to dismantle the stereotypes and help the homeless even in a small way. Dismantling the stereotypes is a great first step to help the homeless. The homeless are people just like all of us and need some help. There are ways to help the homeless without putting ourselves in harm's way. We can all do more to help the homeless, and we are all capable of helping in some way. We can all help by calling the police when we see violence, speaking out to help the homeless, donating clothes, donating food, volunteering at homeless shelters. There are ways for us to help without getting involved, and we need to stop using those stereotypes of, oh, if I give them money, then they're just going to use that for drugs. You do not know that, and we can't automatically assume the worst of people. We don't know what put these people in homelessness. We don't know what their story is, and we cannot define them. We need to just help them, because we've all needed help at some point in our lives. The references that I used for this article and this presentation was reassessing laws on hate violence against the homeless, violence against homeless women, safety and social policy, and ex-offenders and the labor market. These are great articles that help us better understand the violence against the homeless. And I encourage all of you to do every little bit that you can to help the homeless, just as I will do every little bit that I can to help the homeless. Thank you.